I call to order the regular meeting of the City Commission this Monday, June 24th, 2019. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, has the roll been taken?
It has. All are present tonight.
Very good. Tonight we have a presentation by our city planner, Jacob Kane.
Good evening, Mayor Joseph, members of the commission. I'm Jacob Kane, and I'm the city planner for Mount Pleasant. I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit with you tonight about the work of my department, the Planning and Community Development Department. The department is a component of the city's Community Services Division and includes myself as city planner and support from our office professional, Becky Murphy. Planning is about the future. Working collaboratively with a variety of stakeholder groups, the department aims to establish a shared vision for Mount Pleasant, create a plan to achieve that vision, and then implement that plan. The overall vision is contained in the city's master plan, while additional details are added by the city's capital improvement plan, the annual budget, and other planning documents. The code of ordinances, along with programs and services, are then aligned with the future vision so that the vision can be achieved. The department works directly with members of the community to answer questions about zoning, and we field many calls every day. We also provide staff support to the Planning Commission and planning expertise to other internal departments, city boards and commissions, and other agencies in the community. In addition to those traditional planning roles, the planning department takes on a variety of special projects, including the city's recent effort to obtain redevelopment ready community certification, the community rebranding effort, and our ongoing work in response to the state's medical and recreational marijuana regulations. On average, in terms of our traditional planning work, the department processes about 40 planning applications per year, which includes 16 special use permit applications, 20 site plan reviews, a rezoning, and about 3 text amendments in a typical year. Planning is by nature a collaborative activity, and our department works with departments across the city and with other organizations in the community on a regular basis to bring about sound programs and policies to better the community. In 2015, we created an internal review team, which is comprised of myself as the city planner, our building official, our city engineer, and our fire marshal to streamline the development review workflow and improve customer service. We also, at that time, implemented a pre-application meeting program where we meet with prospective applicants to help them prepare their applications to the Planning Commission and expedite their approval process. This team also oversees our administrative site plan review process. That process helps to cut the review time in about half for smaller projects, such as minor building additions or other minor site work that are associated with permitted uses in the city. These changes have improved our internal communication as a team and have also been highly rated by our customers. One of our department innovations, and something I'm really proud of, is our Mount Pleasant Citizens Academy. Since 2016, 81 community members, including 2 of you, have taken part in that program, which highlights information about our city government and how folks can become more involved in our community. The program also highlights the immense pride that your city employees take in their work and demonstrates the valuable role of city government in creating and maintaining a high quality of life in Mount Pleasant. The 5th Annual Academy is scheduled to start in February 2020, and I'm really happy to say we already have 14 people on the list to get notified when that program starts, so we're anticipating we'll have another full class for that 5th Academy next year. So with that, I know you guys have a long agenda tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to highlight the work of the Planning and Community Development Department. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Are there any questions for Jacob?
I just want to say well done for keeping under the 5-minute.
We're going to try to make up the time from the last meeting 1 minute at a time every month. So got 20 months to go, but we'll get there.
Any other questions for Jacob? Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next on our agenda is public input on, or, excuse me, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will now open the public input section on agenda items. If you have public comment on something that is on the agenda tonight, you're welcome to approach the dais, state your name and your address, and you have 5 minutes.
Will, have you noticed what an echo there is? Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to hear you.
Good evening. I'm Erin Strang. I live at 8485 South Meridian Road in Shepherd, Michigan. I'm here on agenda item number 17, the conceptual design plan. I'd first like to thank the commissioners in support of the creation of the plan itself that has gotten us this far and forward to the future of implementing a roadmap. The Smart Zone, I did want to note that the Smart Zone was and still is designed to attract and retain high-tech businesses for high-paying jobs and high-skilled workers. However, as the cultural and societal shift has happened, so have the business trends and companies' abilities to attract these employees. As such, companies are looking for opportunities and creating a sense of place to be a part of in order to accommodate the new workforce. And so that's what makes this plan so relevant today. And with the implementation of this plan and alignment of the components of these companies and site selectors that we're looking to attract and bring to the area. So I believe that this is a good start to be able to go forth with confidence to local, regional, and statewide developers that are looking to be a part of this conceptual design and make it a reality. This conceptual design is just a plan, and there would be variations as it goes through based on the demand of the developers and the interest in the park. But I please ask for your support in that moving forward with that plan and developing the efforts to attract high businesses and high-paying jobs. Myself and Jim McBride are here when we get to that agenda item if you have any additional questions. Jim?
Jim McBride, 2130 Flagstone Court, Mount Pleasant. I'm also President, CEO of Middle Michigan Development Corporation, and Aaron covered everything I was going to say, so just hope you'll support the plan. Thank you.
I'm Dave Coyne. My address is 1368 North Harris, and I own property from the railroad tracks all the way to Harris. And I have, I guess you've probably already seen my letter, and I oppose that diet for Picard. You just sit down there any time of the day, and there's multiple cars coming through there, and I have probably 20 hazardous trucks come through there every day that has to have 2 lanes just to do a turn to get into our property. We just built 3 new buildings and put 6 new 60,000-gallon propane tanks in there for storage. So we have more and more traffic. So I just oppose that. There's no reason to have bike lanes down there, and I think most of the bikers wouldn't even want to go down there with that traffic. So thank you.
My name is John Joslin, 320 East Illinois. I'm here today for 2 items. Number 13, which is the Special Assessment District. We own property at 207 West Broadway and 209 West Broadway. As it was 2 years ago, I am continually opposed to the increase that we've seen in the Special Assessment District. 2015, we were at $85,000. Now you're proposing $123,500 for what I'm assuming are the same services. I think we've maybe added some power washing and some baskets, but it's basically groundskeeping and snow removal. That's a 45% increase over in 5 years. It's ridiculous. We are opposed. My wife and I own the buildings, and we hope that you turn that assessment down. And I'm also here for number 16. As you're all aware, I submitted and had a change.org petition on the diet plan of Picard Street. I anticipated and hoped I'd get 100 signatures, and I have turned that in for you folks. And we surpassed 900 signatures opposing the diet plan. We own property on Picard, 111 West Picard Street, and again, like the last gentleman said, the traffic's incredible and forward-thinking with the ambition of the city to eventually have that part of the ring road. It just doesn't make sense to put a diet there. The traffic flow is too significant for that area. I had somebody give me an argument the other day that High Street was successful because we've reduced the amount of accidents on High Street, and that wasn't technically a diet, but if you look at it, it's the same thing. We went from 4 lanes down to 2 with the turn lane down the middle. And I said, if that's your objective is to eliminate crashes, then you can do that by just closing the actual street. But that's not the only objective. The objective is to get traffic flow. And I've been on High Street where the traffic's been backed up from the light at Main Street, actually from Watson, all the way through Main Street, all the way back to Franklin, when it's really busy. And I can only imagine what Picard Street's gonna end up looking like eventually down the road when we continue to grow as a community, develop the center property, and eventually look at the ring road. So I encourage you to accept staff's recommendation, which is to keep it 4 lanes. Thank you.
Is there anyone else tonight who would like to give public comment? Seeing no one come forward, I will now close the public comment section. Next, we have receipts of petitions and communication. Manager Ridley, would you like to walk us through those?
Yes, the items we have on this part of the agenda tonight are your regular update on pending items, and it has an attachment to it that gives you the 6-month progress that has been made on the work we've done with the 2 citizen groups in regard to our police complaint process, so that communication is in there. Then we have the February minutes of the Building, Fire, and Sanitary Sewer Board of Appeals, the April minutes of the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the May minutes of both the Planning Commission and Airport Advisory Board. You also have a correspondence in the packet from Mike Kostreva regarding his thoughts on the yield to pedestrian signs on Broadway Street, and then a correspondence from Mr. Cald regarding some articles he was interested in having you read about recreational marijuana. And then tonight on the dais, we provided you the resignation from Steve Stressman from the Parks and Recreation Commission, and we'll put that vacancy on our website.
Thank you. Next, we have our consent calendar items. Are there any items that are on the consent calendar that need to be removed? Seeing none, Manager Ridley, would you like to walk us through those?
I will. There's a number of them. The first one is approval of the minutes of your regular meeting of June 10th. And then we have a number of bids for you this evening. The first one is for the bids that we received on replacement of 2 of our police patrol vehicles. We're recommending the low qualified bid of Crapo Ford for the replacement of those 2 vehicles at a cost of $75,374. And I would note that both of these vehicles are hybrid vehicles, which is the first time that police vehicles have been offered in that configuration. So we'll be trying that out this year. The second bid is for the retrofitting of well number 17 for our water system, which includes repairing the lining, installing the pump, and connecting to the discharge pipe. And we're recommending the low qualified bid of Peerless Midwest for $28,778. The third bid is for the removal of our lime residuals at the water plant. And this bid came in much higher than what we've seen in previous years. As a matter of fact, the per cubic yard price is more than double what we paid the last time we had lime removed from our ponds. So we contacted the low bidder to see if he would hold his bid price if we only did 1/2 of the planned removal instead of what we had first bid. And he indicated that he would need to increase his bid price by $1 per cubic yard, but that was still much lower than the second bidder. So we're recommending award of the bid tonight at a not-to-exceed amount of $275,000 to Rocky Ridge Development to do the first phase of those lime residual removals this year. And then next year, we'll have to look at rebidding it again and possibly adjusting what we put into the reserve in the budget to keep up with that. The next bid is for the reservoir bypass for our 1 million gallon reservoir. As you know, we had previously bid this project, and it too came in way over budget. So we provided we had the engineering firm do some redesign of the project, and we rebid it. Unfortunately, it still came in over budget, but we were fortunate that we received a tribal 2% grant in the spring for this important project. So we've contacted the low bidder, and he said he would hold his bid price of this year for the work to be done next year, as long as we purchase the materials this year, so that he doesn't have to worry about those prices going up, and as long as we sign a contract for him to do the work next year as our commitment. So we're recommending you award the bid to LD Doxa for $406,000, and that will allow us to sign the contract to lock in those prices. And the last bid is for a rotating biological contactor replacement. We had a failure of one of these, what we call RBCs, at the wastewater plant, and it has been in service since the 1980s. We received 2 bids for it, and one of the bids was actually for the installation of a used RBC unit, and this company has specialized in taking RBCs out of plants that are no longer using that as a treatment process and rehabbing them and reinstalling them in plants, and he's done about 100 of these across the, not sure if it's across the state or across the nation, but he's done about 100 of them. And the savings for this new unit for both the purchase and install is over $200,000. So we're recommending authorization of a contract with American Resource Recovery for the purchase and installation of that used RBC unit at a total cost of $68,428. The next item we're recommending tonight is that you accept ownership of a parcel of land in the Industrial Park South. In the 1990s, all of the land in the Industrial Park South that the city owned was transferred to the Economic Development Corporation so that the EDC could market and sell the land on our behalf. And it's been quite successful. There's just one parcel of land that still is still marketable and available for sale. But the EDC owns a 9.5-acre parcel, which includes the detention pond for stormwater at the park. And obviously that parcel cannot be marketed for resale. So since the city owns and maintains 5 other detention or retention ponds throughout the city, it makes sense to transfer the ownership of that parcel back to the city. And quite frankly, what brought this up is the next item indicates that we're in the process of applying for a grant to expand that detention pond. And the granting agency has indicated it would be much smoother and cleaner in the grant process if the city owned it instead of the EDC. So the EDC has authorized the chairperson to sign the documents to transfer ownership to the city, but we're recommending you pass a motion to accept ownership of that parcel. And speaking of the grant, we've passed the first threshold of approval through the U.S. Department of Commerce for an Economic Development Administration grant for the expansion of that pond. And this project has been in the capital improvement plan for the last few years and has been delayed as we've tried to identify funding sources for it. And it's important to expand the pond for a number of reasons. One is it's currently not large enough to support the current businesses that are located there, nor allow for additional businesses to be able to use theirs or direct their stormwater to that pond. So this expansion would allow additional business growth in the park and also help to mitigate future flooding down the stream. So the total project cost for the expansion is just over $288,000, and the grant would cover 80% of that cost. Middle Michigan Development Corporation is working with the property owners to get commitments for the property owners to cover 10% of the match, and then the city's 10% would amount to $28,842. So we're recommending approval of the resolution in your packet that moves forward with submitting the grant request and commits our 10% at $28,842. And then lastly, on the consent calendar is we're asking you to set a public hearing for July 8th. And this public hearing is to obtain public comment on a loan that is being processed through the revolving loan fund for Gursky Limited. And this revolving loan fund, you'll recall, is funds that we originally had at the city, and they were transferred to a regional organization to attempt to loan those out so that they could be loaned, repaid, and then there would be less federal requirements attached to those loans. And so Northern Initiatives, who's the representative that markets those loans and does the processing for us, has identified Gursky Limited, who recently purchased Motorless Motion downtown, as one of those loan recipients. And the local unit of government is required to hold a public hearing before that loan is closed. And I said lastly, but I forgot there is one more. The last one truly is approval of payrolls and warrants. So that's the whole consent calendar.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Commissioner Lalone. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent calendar, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? The motion passes. Next on our agenda is item number 11, which is to consider a confirmation of a contract amendment with Mccarrick Sand and Gravel.
As we talked about 2 weeks ago, we were very pleased that McGurk Sand and Gravel completed the Broadway Street reconstruction project ahead of schedule. And they were able to do that in spite of the fact that they ran into some unknown, unforeseen underground experiences, just like we often do in road construction projects. And our purchasing policy provides staff with a 10% contingency on construction projects so we can expeditiously address those unknown things that come up in a construction project and help it to move along. As I indicated, that 10% is generally sufficient to deal with those unforeseen things, but every once in a while we run into a little bit more than is typical. And in this project, we ran into a couple underground things that were detailed in the city engineer's memo that were addressed and taken care of during the construction. But those items, in conjunction with an error that was made in the amount of sand in the original bid proposal, resulted in the total contract, or the total price, being about 16% over the bid amount, which equates to $57,600. So we're recommending that you confirm those contract amendments, recognizing that a piece of it was our error in the amount of sand in the original calculations, and confirm the contract amendment for $57,634 with the appropriate budget amendment.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move to approve the contract amendment with McGurk Sand and Gravel for $57,634 and the appropriate budget amendments as presented.
Commissioner Ling. Discussion? Commissioner Kulik.
I can understand why we have the 10%. It's unfortunate that in this situation we ran over, but I'd much rather pay the extra than be waiting till tonight to approve the extension with the street still torn up. So this is a good thing.
What timing?
Any other discussion? Commissioner Toles.
I had one concern about this on the sand that was used, and Mr. Zhang answered that it was a city misquote or calculation on the amount of sand, and it wasn't the contractor. In the reading it doesn't spell out who made the mistake in the original bid, which if it was contracted by a contractor, that's just tough luck. You bid it, and you're not going to do it. But in essence, if it was the city's problem and mistake, then I can see approving this.
I think our city engineering department does a really good job of, when we get in these situations, to make sure that that any additional charges that may occur are items that are legitimate and necessary. Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of approving the budget amendment as presented, please vote by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? The motion passes 7-0. Item number 12 is to consider a contract agreement or amendment with Gone Trucking for biosolids removal.
In this case, we had a 3-year contract for the removal of our biosolids as well as the cleaning of our digester at the wastewater treatment plant. And it was set up as a not-to-exceed contract with no contingency involved in it. And in the first year of the contract is when the digester was cleaned, and it took substantially longer because of the number of materials that were in the digester, and resulted in the cost for that portion of the contract being higher than we had first thought it might be. We thought that over the next 2 ensuing years that there might be a possibility that our volume of biosolids might have some fluctuation in it, so we might be able to cover that overage throughout the next 2 years and still be able to meet the not-to-exceed amount. But what we found over those years is the volume of biosolids really did not change that much. It stayed pretty stable. And so as we are ready to remove the biosolids this year, in order to remove all that needs to be done, we need to amend the not-to-exceed amount by $30,000, which again goes back to that extra cleaning that was done in 2017. And so the total not-to-exceed amount would be increased by $30,000 so we could do the final cleaning this year and close out that contract.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move to approve the contract amendment for $30,000 relating to the 3-year not to exceed $223,500.
Vice Mayor Gillis.
Second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Kulik.
I'm assuming in the future, we will, based on this, when we bid this again, have a projected increase in the tonnage or volume of biosolids that we're asking people to bid on?
Yes, each year when we do that, we look at it, and we also look at our history with the cleaning of the digester to bid based on that actual history.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, the same. Motion passes 7-0. Next on our agenda is item number 16, which is discuss the mill and overlay of Picard Street. Oh, I'm sorry. Item number 13 is to consider resolution number 3 and resolution number 4 to set a public hearing July 8th, 2019 for the Special Assessment District. Manager Ridley, would you like to start us off?
Yes, last meeting you postponed this because during public comment, it was indicated that the taxes to the businesses in the Central Business District went up between 18 to 20% this year, and the special assessment had also increased by 35% last year. So you postponed to ask us to look into the taxes that had gone up. The memo from City Assessor Chris Cookie in your packet provides in summary, the following information. What he indicated was, although the assessed values of the properties in the Central Business District, or actually in the Principal Shopping District, increased somewhere in the 12 to 20% this year, that was based on actual sale prices that had occurred. And this means that sale prices were higher over that study period than what we had assessed the values of the properties at, which overall is good for our community and good for property owners, especially those who might want to be looking to sell their properties. But as you know, the amount of taxes paid is based on the taxable value of the property, not the assessed value. And the taxable value of the property is limited to the rate of inflation, or 5%, whichever is less, unless the property is sold or improvements are made to it. So from a taxable value standpoint, the data shows that of the 229 parcels in the Principal Shopping District, 173 of them went up this year by the rate of inflation, which is 2.4%, just like the rest of the properties in the city. And only 8 of them went up by more than 2.4%, and those were due to the taxable value being uncapped because the property sold or there were improvements made to the property. So that's the data that you had requested before you considered resolutions 3 and 4.
And Jeremy, because we postponed this, we are still on the motion from last meeting?
Correct. You have a motion from Kulik, seconded by Ling, to approve resolutions 3 and 4 from the last meeting, so you can start right there with
Okay.
that motion.
Okay. Is there any discussion on this motion? Commissioner Toles.
I was hoping that we were going to get some figures from the assessor. He's just given us some percentages. I tend not to agree with his last paragraph. We saw a large increase in downtown commercial property values last year. I know about 3 parcels that were purchased way above the market price that are now, all 3 parcels are now back on the market, because of a divorce. And I don't think those are going to bring anywhere near what they sold. You must take the highest and the lowest and then average it out, and I don't think this is happening here. There's a lot of buildings still for sale that have not sold, that are still assessed at the old prices. I just don't agree with this.
Commissioner Kulik.
I'll be supporting the setting the public hearing. We're not actually approving the 3 and 4. Yeah, all we're doing tonight is really setting a public hearing. We're not actually adopting the special assessment, so I'll be supporting that.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Kulik.
I guess if Commissioner Toles wants some additional information, let staff know specifically what you want so that you can have it before our July 8th meeting.
Okay. Vice Mayor Gillis.
I understand the plight of our downtown business owners that have continuously, every year, had to make arrangements to accommodate the increase of the special assessment. I just want to give my opinion on the reservations I have on this, where we have longtime business owners downtown that are complaining about their increase of taxable assessments, and other brand-new developments that are asking us to give them a complete tax abatement. So I would hope that we would give in kind our businesses downtown, our businesses that have held our downtown as an economic vital shopping area, and try to do the best that we can to reduce those tax burdens. And in turn, keep in mind that new development will be asking for complete tax abatements or 50% tax abatements. And we're willing to entertain that notion, whereas our downtown businesses are suffering because of the taxable burden that we put on them. So I'll be voting no for this.
Commissioner Kulik.
I beg to disagree that you're comparing apples with oranges. The state does not have any mechanism that allows us to treat longtime businesses different. The state has programs that allow us to abate taxes for new businesses coming in, businesses that are going to be expanding, or businesses that are going to be adding employees. But just because you've been a rock-solid business there for 20 years, I'm sorry, the state doesn't allow us to do anything.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of approving resolutions 3 and 4, please vote by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed?
Aye.
Those 5-2 with Gillis and Toles. Next item on our agenda is item number 16, which is to discuss the mill and overlay of Picard Street and confirm design of pavement markings. Manager Ridley, would you like to introduce us?
Yes, as you know, the non-motorized plan from 2011, which was incorporated into our master plan in 2014, recommends that Picard Street from Mission to Lincoln be road dieted, for lack of a better word, to reduce the number of travel lanes and use those extra lanes as bike lanes. This was studied in 2017, and the staff recommendation at that time was that although the data indicates that such a plan is possible, that it would make more sense to wait and do this kind of a project when the mill overlay was completed, which was a couple of years out at that time, and also recommended that it would be considered after public input was received. So the mill and overlay is now planned for next year because we received a $375,000 grant for the mill and overlay. So it became prudent to evaluate the feasibility of the road diet as was recommended in that plan. The data was reviewed again, and as you know, a pretty robust public input process took place. And as the memo from City Engineer Stacy Tuari indicates, the data indicates that it is possible to reduce the travel lanes based on traffic volumes and other data. So then the question becomes, should it be reduced, which is when we look at the context of the road and the input received. So the recommendation is to not implement the road diet, and it's based on the following primary reasons in the memo. There's concern about backups at the railroad track. There's concern about the safety of bike lanes if there's not a physical buffer with such a high volume of truck traffic when the speed is 35 miles per hour, or I should say when the posted speed limit is 35 miles per hour. The lack of support for the ends of the road diet by both the Isabella County Road Commission and MDOT, and as you heard this evening, the significant public opposition to it. So our recommendation is that the current lane configuration be maintained after the mill and overlay takes place in 2020.
Commissioner Ling.
I move that we approve the recommendation to maintain the current 4-lane configuration of West Picard Street.
Commissioner Tolos.
Support.
Discussion? Commissioner Ling?
I'd like to thank the staff for the really thorough job that was done in looking at this. I read through the report, and it really did consider all the factors that are important in trying to decide whether or not moving to a road diet makes sense. And I think that there were a number of reasons why it did not make sense to do it in this situation. I think it's important to point out several things. While we have a non-motorized plan, and it was very well done, very well thought out a number of years ago, and much of it has been implemented, at least the short-term goals, much of it has been implemented, but they said themselves in making the recommendations on the non-motorized plan that while these were general recommendations that seemed to fit in particular areas, that before specific plans were finalized, the conditions within the area should be looked at, and that's what's happened here. And the conditions in the area indicated in this particular case, it was really not appropriate at this time. So it's not an indication that we are not supportive of the non-motorized plan. I think we've been very supportive of it, but it is an indication that when you look at what other experts say about when it works and when it doesn't, this happened to be one, particularly the railroad crossing was one particular problem. The second thing is, among the people that I talked to when we had the open house on this, the person that I spent the most time talking to was someone who rides a bike extensively and who indicated that the more recent recommendations dealing with these kinds of areas is not to put in bike lanes without some kind of an actual physical barrier of some kind, that's more likely to actually protect the bikers, and it's difficult to do that in this area. And then finally, the report did recommend that, because in 2017, that report said that it could potentially have an impact on reducing crashes, but that there were other things that we could do, and in the memo from the city manager, you indicated that we were going to take a look at those, and so I would just like to encourage us to take a look at other measures that we could take to deal with the crashes in that area.
Commissioner Tolos.
I think we expended very much time in going over this. As I discussed in our meeting upstairs here about a month ago, there was a railroad backup problem. The County Road Commission said no, MDOT said no, Union Township said no. I mean, this deal should have been killed months ago. And we just drug it out and expended all kind of additional expenses on this. And even we bid out for the restriping. it would have been $6,800 to redo it just the way it is. If we had to put bike lanes and the other implementation in, was $22,000. But we should have killed this a long time ago, is my feeling on it.
Vice Mayor Gillis?
I agree with Commissioner Tolis. We took a lot of time as a city commission discussing this. It seemed apparent to me that a road diet was not going to work on that road. We also took a lot of time from the community to come to the open forum to tell us what they thought. And while I was here at that 2-hour forum, I spoke to several people. Not one person was in favor of this road diet to 3 lanes and bike lanes on both sides. So I want to thank staff for doing their due diligence and giving us as much information. And I also want to apologize to staff for the rigmarole we put them through. I want to apologize to our community members that we asked them to come out on that evening where they had other places to go. And I want to commend the community member who put the petition up and got over 900 signatures to try to let us know that what we had in plan for Picard wasn't the best idea. I also believe it was somewhat of a diversion from the big elephant in the room, and that is Parcel B, which we'll be discussing tonight at the work session. I would hope the community would listen to the work session discussion and read as much material as you can on this development, because that is where we really need your voice. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed? The motion passes 7-0. Item number 17 is to consider the endorsement of conceptual plan for Central Michigan University Smart Zone. Manager Ridley.
Yes, as you heard during public comment from CMURC's President Aaron Strang, and you received a presentation from her in April on the conceptual plan that was completed by the Gibbs Planning Group. The results of that study indicate that businesses creating jobs and looking to locate in business parks, their expectations have changed from when we first put the park together in the 1980s and 1990s. And so included in your packet is, excuse me, a summary document that was provided by Gibbs Planning Group of what they see as the future vision or future use of the almost 300 acres at the south end of CMU's campus. As you know, we have not had much luck attracting private investment in that portion of the city, so this study was requested in order to understand what private investors are looking for so that we are marketing something that is attractive to them. The land on the south end of CMU's campus is zoned Special District U, which means that it's a university district, so our standard zoning process isn't necessarily followed in that process. But our partnership and mutual investment with CMU makes it important that all of the partners agree on what the future vision is for that 300 acres. CMU's indicated that if this vision is approved, that amendments to the restrictive covenants, which really drive what can be built in the land and some of the design guidelines for it, those restricted covenants would be amended to accommodate this future vision. And we have an opportunity to provide input into those amendments when CMU amends those restrictive covenants. So tonight, we're merely looking for your thoughts about your endorsement of the future vision so that CMU knows where their partner stands on it and can look at adjustments to those restrictive covenants, and so that both MMDC and CMU Research Corporation are marketing things that we really are supportive of for our community. So we're just looking for your endorsement of the conceptual plan this evening. And as Erin mentioned, both she and Jim are here if you have specific questions about the plan itself.
Commissioner Kulik.
Move to endorse the conceptual plan for the future land use and conceptual design in the smart zone land.
Commissioner Lalone.
Second.
Commissioner Kulik.
I have a question, does the Smart Zone anticipate that this land will be sold fee simple to developers, or would it be leased land with buildings on it? I'm concerned about the tax implications.
Yes, in order for a project to move forward, the CMU Board of Trustees would have to approve whatever that land would look like. At this time, they are looking at land leases. As we have proven out in a couple of models before, in leasing the land to a developer and then subleasing to a third party, all of the financing and things seems to be able to be put in place. So that is the trend, and that is the appetite currently of the Board of Trustees. I do not want to speak for them, but that is what historically the trend has been.
Nancy, with that type of a situation, the only, I'm going to say, tax loss for the city is that the land itself stays tax exempt because it's owned by the university, but all the improvements on it are taxed at the current rate.
Right, as long as the buildings are privately owned, they're taxed at the same rate as other buildings throughout the city.
And the second question I have is, any improvements in there, are any of those envisioned as the city? Any of those road extensions, utilities, things of that sort? Those are all on the developer's dime, aren't they?
There are some, the plan does include some changes in road configurations and some public sidewalks. But yes, the expectation would be that, just like throughout the city, when we develop something, the initial expectation is that the developer would cover any of those improvements that are needed. But certainly as part of the negotiation, CMU could consider that, or there is the possibility that a request could be made to the LDFA to cover that. But we start with the assumption that the developer will do that.
Commissioner Ling.
I was wondering, and I don't know whether I should be addressing this to the CMURC or to our staff. We're in the middle of doing our own master plan process, and as I was looking at these plans, I don't remember there being much discussion with our own master plan team about what was happening in this area. And I just wonder if there was any discussion that occurred, and if not, if perhaps we could suggest that there needed to be, at least that our consultant should be taking a look at those plans to see how they coordinate with our plans, particularly on South Mission Street.
Yes, is Jacob still here? He's not. I'm fairly certain that the Gibbs conceptual plan was shared with our consultant McKenna, and so they're aware of what the recommendations were. But I can double check that to make sure they've taken that into consideration.
We have Bill Midderdeza.
I would echo what Manager Ridley indicated, that we supplied the consultant with all the plans that we had, as well as made them aware of the plans that CMU has been working on. In addition, we had a fairly lengthy conversation and participation from folks at CMU during the charrette process. So we're pretty well integrated in terms of what the thought process is and what the concepts are between what the city's looking at master plan wise and what the Smart Zone is considering in that location.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kulik.
One other thing that I like about this plan as opposed to the initial plan, I'm sorry, there was so much wasted land that when you're a bound-up city without a lot of land for future development, you have to make square footage count, and I don't want everything's built up so it looks like New York City, but this looks like a lot more intense use, which is a good thing for the Smart Zone. Just so you don't end up with the same problem we have with an industrial park south. You may want to have people go back and look at the size of your water detention ponds with this going on.
Commissioner Toles.
I will not be supporting this. I think it creates an unlevel playing field for local business people here. For one fact, the property tax is exempt. You're going to build a building and you have personal property tax, but that's unlevel. The zoning is going to be relaxed. I think you're going to put apartments and other commercial buildings in there that are going to compete with the city here, and I just think it's definitely on another level. You're actually building a city inside of a city and then competing with local taxpayers here. One example is SBX. I mean, CMU basically put SBX out of business. So where is that going to end at? Same with the apartments. Enrollment's down. If we don't fill those apartments, well, we'll go freshmen, sophomore, juniors have to stay on campus. Who's going to rent their units first? CMU. They're a business entity just like anybody else. And I just feel that everything has to be put on a level playing field, and it's not. So I will not be supporting this.
Vice Mayor Gillis.
I also agree with Commissioner Toles. I do not want competition with our zoning that we just changed along Mission. We are trying to accommodate mixed-use buildings with the vacant malls that are all the way up and down the strip. For years, we have allowed tax capture through the LDFA for a specific reason, for a tech zone through that smart zone area south of CMU. For years, they have captured taxes. We've had a few developments here and there, not as many as we probably would have wished. Every year, I've asked what new buildings or what new development have we been able to recruit there, and it hasn't happened. I don't know if it's because of economics or the marketplace, or we just haven't pushed hard enough. I would not take our South Industrial Park, which has large parcels, 10-acre parcels, and if anybody's familiar with the South Industrial Park, there's plenty of vacant land in that industrial park. But I would be hesitant to take those parcels, make them 5-acre parcels, and then change the zoning for a mixed use. I think designated areas for different types of businesses and zoning is a good thing. But my major concern here is the competition with the city. If you do develop a city within a city and start providing housing and different type of mixed use, not only for the development out at the regional center that we hope to have something in the future, I don't want that to compete with us, that 300 acres that we will be developing, or along Mission. I would rather have people that are looking for those mixed-use buildings to be taking in those vacant buildings, either rehabbing them or taking them down to the ground and building new. So unfortunately, I won't be supporting this evening.
Seeing no other discussion, all those in favor of supporting the conceptual plan for the Central Michigan University Smart Zone, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-2. Our next item on our agenda is item number 18, which is consider contracting for a municipal investment advisor. Manager Ridley, would you like to introduce us?
Yes, your last action item tonight is this item, and over the years, our city treasurer has invested our non-pension cash for the city, and yields have historically been low, so our primary criteria has been about safety and liquidity in those investments. Because the yields have started to see some upward trends, we feel there's options within the investment market and within what we can invest through the state law that could be investing our excess funds to generate even higher yields while still maintaining safety and liquidity. So we sent RFPs to municipal investment advisors to provide that analysis and advise us. And as standard in the industry, their fee is based on a part of the interest that is earned. And the responsible bidders that we're looking at in this are looking at having a rate of 0.1%, which based on our invested cash would equate to approximately $12,000 per year. Under our purchasing policy, we had authority to enter into this contract without bringing it to the City Commission, but because it is a newer concept that we haven't previously used, we thought it important to get your endorsement of such a concept before we sign the contract. And Mary Ann Cornexel's memo goes into a lot more detail about the advantages of this, but we're recommending a 2-year contract to see what kind of positive impact this could have on our yields.
Commissioner Ling.
I move that we endorse the concept of utilizing a municipal investment advisor for non-pension funds.
Commissioner Kulik.
Support. Second.
Discussion? Commissioner Kulik.
Bless you, Mary Ann. You have enough to do without having to chase down interest rates every time we have a few extra shekels in the bank. So I think this is a good thing.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. And those opposed, the same?
Aye.
The motion passes 6-1. Next on our agenda is announcements on city-related issues and new business. Commissioner Kulik.
Before we bid out the lime removal for next year, I'd like to ask staff if they could make an outreach to MSU Extension Office. I've talked to Paul Gross in the past, and he seems to think there's quite the market for lime for farmers in the area. I would suspect that I may be wrong, but I suspect removing the lime from the pond is probably nothing more than dump trucks and excavators. I'm probably oversimplifying it. And perhaps with a year's warning, we could get some sort of cooperative agreement in place with local farmers, MSU Extension, and possibly get the lime removed a lot cheaper than just contracting it and the contractor trying to figure out what to do with all that product. And the other thing is, it's summertime, state law now requires cars to give bicycles a 3-foot clear passing lane, so be careful out there, folks. That's it.
Any other new business?
Oh, I've got one more.
Yeah, Commissioner Kulik.
Since I'm on a roll. Nancy, if you could remind our visitors at home or Paul, fireworks are coming up, and my dog doesn't like fireworks, so if you can remind the folks what the local ordinance is for fireworks.
Do you remember off the top of your head, Paul? I don't either off the top of my head. I know it's limited. It can't be after 11 p.m., but I don't remember which days. I think it's the 4th of July holiday, the day before, and the day after.
Yeah.
So it would be July 3rd, 4th, and 5th, no later than 11 p.m.
Middle of the work week. Vice Mayor Gillis.
Commissioner Tolis, or Commissioner Kulik's 5 foot for bicycles makes me think. 3 foot. 3 foot. Makes me think, how could we have done that on Picard with bike lanes without going into another lane? So, I first want to thank the Friends of the Broadway Theater and Mr. Ronan for opening up the post office and the Broadway Theater last weekend for the 100th anniversary and allowing the community to tour those 2 beautiful buildings. It was a joy and a pleasure, and I hope they do it the next 100 years. So, and if you ever do want to see the inside, I'm sure the people that are involved with those 2 buildings would love to take you through it. It was a very nice afternoon, so thank you to those 2 and the Friends of the Broadway. I also would like to thank Steve Stressman for serving on our Parks and Rec. He's in the audience this evening. He served on it almost 3 years, and I thank you for the service. He's put his resignation in today. because he will be serving on our ZBA. So for those of you in our community that would like to serve on the Parks and Rec Commission, please go to mountpleasant.org under Boards and Commissions, and you can fill out an application because we do have a vacancy on that committee. I also want to remind the public that we have an election coming up this November, and you can pick up your city commission application packets from Jeremy, and you have till July 23rd of next month to get those petition packets in, and we really need good representatives for our community. So please entertain that notion if you're involved and want to be more involved. We would love to have you on the ballot. And lastly, I would like to give a shout out to Director Laria. He was appointed by Governor Whitmer to be on our School Safety Commission for the state. And so I want to thank him for his service to Mount Pleasant and also for his commitment to this committee. Thank you, Director.
Any other new business or announcements? Seeing none, we'll now move into the second public comment section on agenda or non-agenda items. You can come up to the podium, state your name, your address, and you'll have 5 minutes to address the commission on any city-related business. Seeing no one come forward, I will now close the public comment section. And I believe we'll now recess for a work session upstairs in Conference Room A on 410 West Broadway and potentially the 2020 goals.